What do you think PJ Washington's strengths and weaknesses are, and how can the Mavericks harness his full potential? Because the reason why I say potential is you look at it and you're like, holy crap, I can see why he got drafted so high. But eventually, Charlotte got to a point where they're like, well, he's never going to be the dude. And then eventually...
He didn't have to be on this team.
That's true. Yeah. That is very true. But then eventually they moved to the point where he is expendable. Now, I know there are reasons he was expendable. He has all kinds of upside, but we are where we are. And you've already seen in these 3 games, that OKC game, I thought you were like, well, here we go. And then last night against San Antonio, maybe not so much.
This is who he is.
Yeah.
And the Mavericks don't want this guy. Okay? They believe that there's more there. I compare it to the Rangers signing John Gray from the Colorado Rockies, a bad team for most of his career, and you see the 97-mile-an-hour fastball, you see the wipeout slider, and you're like, we're going to get that every game from him. We're going to figure out how to get that every game. So I did this before, but I'll do it again. His last 4 games with Charlotte, and they wanted him to be their 3rd best consistent player. They wanted in their scheme of things, LaMelo Ball is their Luka. He's never healthy, but that's their Luka. And then they have Miles Bridges, obviously off the court, crazy guy kind of, and trying to clean that up. But he's there.
Did you see the update to that, by the way?
That everything got dropped. Right?
For the other one. Remember we talked about like the throwing of the pool ball and the violation of the restraining order? The cops said they found inconsistencies in that testimony and they dropped it all.
Well, and PJ Washington's career has been an inconsistent career. And that's the issue is 5, 22, 15, and 6. Those were his last 4 games in Charlotte. And you can go and look at this, and he averages 14 in the month of January. He has a 43-point game in there. He has a 0-point game in there. He has a 5-point game in there. He has a 26-point game in there. And the
5-point game is more fascinating to me because he played like
28 minutes.
A normal amount. Yeah.
Right. I know the one where he scored 0 was 6 minutes. I don't know what happened in that game, but that's who he is, though. He's a dude who sometimes last night has 3 points. Other nights he's going to have 23 points. You don't want that you never want that out of a player.
Yeah.
That's impossible for a coach to figure out. How much should I play him? Should I play him down the stretch? You want to know what your guy's going to be and do. Yes, there's going to be good games and bad games, but you don't want it to always be good games and bad games. PJ Washington did not have a bad game last night. He affected the game in other ways besides his 1 of 6 scoring for 3 points. But you want to have an idea. Every time PJ Washington takes the court, I'm expecting 15 points. I don't want him to score 25 and 3. I'd rather him score 12 and 17. So I never see that game, but I also never see this game. So that's what the Mavericks traded for. I know this from baseball is when you take a guy this inconsistent, the organization is saying, we can get him consistent.
One of the shifts I'm curious how you feel about. I would like to see this. I know this isn't the way of the modern NBA, and people might tell you it's inefficient. I would like to see him move closer and stop shooting so many 3-pointers. I realize last month, I think it was, he did pretty well. But for his career, he is not a good 3-point shooter, and he usually shoots a pretty decent amount, 5, 6 a game. He's just not a good 3-point shooter unless we fundamentally overhaul some mechanisms, which doesn't feel like an in-season thing. I would like to see him moving toward, I'm not saying he's got to drive through the paint every time, but I would like to see more mid-range stuff from him, perhaps.
Yeah, and this is the thing, Corey, that we just don't know. We don't know how much he practices 3-point shooting with Charlotte versus how much he's going to practice 3-point shooting with Dallas. Like, I don't know. Dorian Finney-Smith couldn't make a 3-pointer to save his life. Literally, he would have died a million times. For his first 3 years in his career, you were pretty much asking Shaquille O'Neal to shoot corner 3-pointers named Dorian Finney-Smith. That's how ugly and horrible it looked. But he practiced it so much because the Mavericks said, this is what you're going to get on our team. This is how you're going to become an NBA basketball player. We like your athleticism. We like your defense. You got to figure out how to make 4 out of 10 of these in the corner, and then you will get money in this league. And Dorian Finney-Smith figured it out. I'm wondering, when he was with Charlotte, he picked a lot. He was the guy picking for LaMelo Ball and then rolling and doing different things. I'm just wondering, this is where, is there enough time in this season? You have him for multiple years. What's his practice going to be like now with the Mavericks to work off of Luka, to work off of Kyrie, to work off of this offense, which is a little bit different than Charlotte.
Yeah, because if you can develop a good pick and roll with one of those two guys or both of those guys, or pick and whatever you decide to do with that,
he won't be the picker here. I'm just going to explain this because he's going to be guarded by an athletic guy. That's why centers are so important now. That's why Dwight Powell had to be part of your offense, because you want the center switching to Luka. You want the center switching to Kyrie. So you never really want PJ being the picker in a lot of these things, because he's going to bring a 6'7" or 6'9" guy who's somewhat athletic. You want the 7-footer having to switch and guard Luka, and you want the 6'4" guy now having to roll with the center.
But triple picks though. That's what I'm looking at. All the triple picks. That being said,
Hell
though,
yeah.
I know this is a different era, different team, completely different situation, different people. But Sean Marion was a guy that you were like, I feel like I can put him on 4 different offensive players.
I can see that.
And that's kind of what I foresee with PJ. Now, I'm not saying he just puts the clamps on everybody, but he has, when you say what are his strengths and weaknesses, length and strength. I think the dude's really strong and wants to compete on that defensive end. And that's one of the things where I'm going to tell him, look, man, because very similar to Mike, your offensive nights might be few and far between, but your defensive effort is going to have to be there every night, because maybe there it is a night, because there was a 22-point game from Sean Marion in the playoff run, but it wasn't every night that you were expecting that out of him. So you get that on the night when you need it. But you also throughout you got a guy that can guard lots of different positions.
And look, I wanted to talk about, because if we're talking about maybe one of the weaknesses has been shooting, especially from distance, absolutely defense. Look, if you look at his defensive rating, which I know can be a flawed statistic, it looks like it's taken a downturn just from what you see on the court.
Right.
I'll admit, I have not been breaking down all the Charlotte games from earlier in the season.
Right.
So just from what you've seen on the court with Dallas, I don't find that to be the case at all. And I definitely think you can look at some points where he impacted the game defensively.
100%.
And so that's a balance that, quite frankly, the Mavericks need. Like, if I have to sacrifice some shooting for more defense, I'll make some of those
Luka and Kyrie are going to get their points.
For sure.
Gafford now is going to get his points. Hell, Jaden Hardy is going to get something.
Yeah.
That's fun. Those guys are going to get their points. So let that work itself out, but you got to be a better defensive team. And that's one of the key areas.
Well, think about what you had before this trade. Nothing against Derek Jones Jr. He's revitalized his career to being an NBA basketball player. He looks like he weighs 110 pounds. And I know he weighs more than that. But he's easy to, like, all right, guard Kawhi Leonard if that's your first-round matchup. All right, Kawhi's just going to force him underneath the rim and then lay it up or dunk on him because he's not physically strong enough to deal with him. PJ Washington is PJ Washington physically gifted enough athletically to stay with him if he backs the ball out to the perimeter? Because Derek Jones guarding Kawhi on the perimeter is going to be pretty good. It's just the part where he leans his body into him that it's completely over. Well, now you lean into PJ Washington. He's like, I'm fine. I'm pretty much as strong as you are. Like guarding Luka. Luka can't blow by guys, but he's so much physically stronger than everybody. He just has to get you on the side. He just has to make one quick step. You're on the side of him, and it's over. You're not going to get back in front of him, and he's going to bully you the rest of the way to wherever he wants to go. So
he leverages you
now
bad.
You have a physical guy. And Josh Green, I know we're not talking about him, but he's a guy that I hope this isn't what he did last year. Do you remember last year this was the time where he took off? You know how sometimes guys have months where you're like, this is the month, and this is what I'm hoping about with the month of February. Month of February, Josh Green is when we are like, oh my gosh, he's doing it. He's turning into a good NBA basketball player. And then we got to the end of February and March, like, Josh Green can't play in this league anymore. How did this change? And so I'm hoping that this Josh Green is here to stay. I've seen this Josh Green before. It was around this time last year.
For long.
Yes.
For the rest of the season.
I need him to be this guy. I need him to be in the starting spot and play 24 really solid minutes for you. I do like these trades, though, because PJ Washington isn't a one-trick pony. You just talked about, hey, he can score around the basket. He can dribble the ball.
Yes.
We're hoping that he can become a better corner three-point shooter to add that to his game, but he's not. Nothing against Dorian Finney-Smith. Literally only thing that Dorian Finney-Smith could do offensively was he could dunk a basketball. That's one. And then two, he could shoot corner threes at a high percentage.
And PJ Washington said something, I think it was after not last night, but the game before. Everybody was telling me I was going to get a lot of open shots, but I didn't realize it until I was out there playing with Luka, Kyrie, and all those guys. So that might naturally change some of the way you shoot as well, if you know you're going to get that extra like half second, quarter second, whatever.
I'll go real quick to my tweet, which I pretty much said this team has a chance to win it all. And I'm condensing it. I said they're probably not. And the reason I'm saying they're probably not is because there's not enough time to gel. So as we talk about PJ Washington just bringing this in, there's not enough time for him to practice 3-point shooting from the corner off of Luka. Like he's realizing, wow, you don't have much practice time in the second half of the season because guys are wearing down. And so your practices are more walkthroughs than practices. But I think he can get better. I think this Mavs team now has everything it needs. So in my tweet, I said this. You have the two superstars. One is a superstar. The other one can work off of the superstar. He's done it before. He just has to stay healthy, and Kyrie. You have wing defenders. We just mentioned this. And PJ Washington, Josh Green, Derek Jones Jr., if Dante Exum is ever healthy. So you have a plethora, and Maxi Kleber, who's really a wing defender who can guard multiple positions, but really a good, tall wing defender. So you have all of that. You have some guys that can score off of the bench in Hardaway and Hardy. You have two legitimate big guys that now Dwight Powell, who really should just be in this league waving a towel. Like, let's face it, for the last 5 years, he should have never been playing NBA basketball. He should just be on the team as a good teammate. But we've had to play him for 5 straight years. So you have everything there. And then the majority of your guys are all in their mid-20s. Besides Kyrie, and I guess you could say Maxey, who's part of your major rotation, everybody else is in their mid-20s for the most part. So this looks like a team that could grow into something special.
And to go along with that, a lot of them are locked up for multiple years.
Yeah. So I look at it. Derek Lively came back. He made a major impact. San Antonio looked horrible in the second half. And I don't know like where San Antonio is going with Wemby. I do like him. He's a really good player, but that didn't look good at all last night.
Now, our young player from the same draft, you just mentioned him, is Derek Lively. Derek Lively came back, came off the bench, which is logical given the progression. One of the things that he said about playing with his mask, he said, I'm probably going to have to wear it for the next 3 or 4 weeks to make sure my nose heals straight and everything like that. So just be prepared for that.
Last thing, this is maybe a question for tomorrow. I wonder when you get past the All-Star break and you come back, Gafford and Lively, I think they share the position, but I just wonder, is it better to start Gafford? Is it better to start Lively? Does that matter? You know, I think Gafford's going to be in your closing 5 minutes, and I think Lively will grow into that in his career. But I'm wondering when you get back from break.
Right now, you need to get as many reps with Gafford as you can before playoffs, my opinion.
And I'm going to throw this out there, and I realize that a lot of people don't agree with this. I do think you're going to see them on the court sometimes together. I realize the 3-point shooting deficit of why that won't happen. I'm not saying it's going to be to close the game. I think you're going to see plenty of spurts with them in there together to see how it plays out. So just keep an eye on that as well.
Okay.
Thanks, Corey.